Well, folks, welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at the 2026 U.S. Senate elections and looking at our August 2025 prediction. Right now, we know that Republicans will be defending their 53-seat majority to the Democrats, 45 plus 2 independent seats that caucus with the Democrat Party. Republicans, led by John Thune in the Senate, will be defending this majority and so far are very well positioned to win the majority in the Senate in 2026. But let's dive into it today. First off, we will start off with some of the most Republican and Democrat seats. These are going to be the safe Republican and safe Democrat seats going into the 2026 election. For the Republicans, you have places like Idaho, West Virginia, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and basically most of the South here we're going to see will be safe Republican. Now, obviously, we can see we have a couple states that we did not include here. Places like Florida, places like South Carolina, places like Texas that are not in the safe Republican category as of right now. For the Democrat Party, you have Jeff Merkley in Oregon who will be running for re-election. In Colorado, you have a very interesting something very interesting there. Right now, you have John Hickenlooper, who is the incumbent senator. He is actually not going to run for re-election. He's going to run for the gubernatorial election in Colorado. As of right now, we do not know who will be the nominee, but it's safe to say that this will be a safe safe Democrat seat. Colorado voted for Kamala Harris by 11 points in the 2024 election. It has shifted to the left the most out of almost any state in the United States. Remember, Hillary Clinton only won the state by about 5 percentage points in 2016. Fast forward to 2024, we see that Democrats and Kamala Harris won the state by almost 11 points, doubling their margin of victory. Now, we know Biden won it by roughly 13, so it was down a little bit from 2020, but still, they've almost doubled their margin of victory from 2016. Now, included with that will be Illinois, where you have Dick Durbin, longtime senator from the state of Illinois, who will not be running for re-election. Right now, it appears that the lieutenant governor of Illinois will be the nominee. Obviously, J.B. Pritzker is putting his money, effort, and time behind her. We will see exactly how that works out. But then another seat would be, obviously, Massachusetts and Rhode Island are both Democrat-safe seats. Now, for the likely Republican seats going into the 2026 election, that would be places like Montana, like Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Florida, South Carolina, Ohio, and Alaska at this point. Now, a couple things that we can note here. In the state of Florida, it was just recently announced that President Donald Trump did endorse Senator Ashley Moody for re-election in 2026. If you remember, go back to earlier last year, Donald Trump selected Marco Rubio as his Secretary of State. Governor DeSantis appointed at that time Attorney General Ashley Moody to fill that vacancy. Now, Moody will have to run in 2026 for re-election or for a special election, and will have to run again in 2028 to have a full 6 years in the Senate. But as of right now, we have the state of Florida as a likely Republican seat, along with South Carolina, where you have Lindsey Graham running for re-election. You go to the state of Ohio. Ohio is a very interesting state as of right now. Apparently, recently, Sherrod Brown, who is the former senator from Ohio, who lost his election in 2024 to now Senator Bernie Moreno, has talked with Senate Democrats. Remember, Brown lost about 46. He won about 46% of the vote in this election. Moreno won by about 3.5% in this election. Sherrod Brown has reportedly met with Chuck Schumer in Ohio amid a 2026 push. Chuck Schumer off a very, very big victory in the state of North Carolina. He was able to court Roy Cooper to run in this election. Democrats see this as a top pickup opportunity in North Carolina. Now Chuck Schumer is focusing on the state of Ohio, where he believes that Sherrod Brown is the best candidate, the best position, best funded candidate to flip this Senate seat in 2026. Remember, this is a seat that is currently held by John Husted. Husted was appointed to replace J.D. Vance when he became vice president of the United States. Vance just won this election back in 2022, beat out his opponent at that time, Tim Ryan, by roughly about 7 percentage points in this election. As of right now, I have this as a likely Republican seat. There's a lot of noise that Brown may run for the gubernatorial election in Ohio. Obviously, we're going to have to wait this out, see how everything plays out. We don't know where all the cards are. Yes, Schumer's talked with him. We don't really know much more than that. Remember, he was a 3-term Democrat senator from the state of Ohio. He is 72 years old at this point. It'll be very interesting to see exactly how this goes. But as of right now, we have this as a likely Republican. If Brown enters this race, very much can see this becoming a lean Republican seat very, very quickly, and even a competitive seat, if not a lean Republican seat in 2026. Now, another state we can talk about is the state of Texas. Texas, where you have some very, very interesting things going on in the state of Texas right now. Texas, as of right now, has a very, very interesting Senate election. You have the incumbent attorney general who is primarying the incumbent 4-term senator John Cornyn from the state of Texas. Right now, in poll after poll, we see it that John Cornyn is losing in the primary polling to Ken Paxton, who is a much more conservative MAGA Republican. Right now, in the polling, the most recent poll came out in June, shows Paxton up on John Cornyn by roughly 19 points. Every single poll that has been taken between now and July of 2022 shows that Ken Paxton is leading John Cornyn in this race. Now, although that is the case, polling shows that Paxton is ahead. John Cornyn clearly has the cash advantage as the incumbent. Right now, he has roughly $6 million cash on hand to Ken Paxton's $2.5 million cash on hand. But here's the reality. Look at this. Paxton has only spent about $400,000 out of his war chest. And he is already leading in the polls. Imagine what he could do with the other money that he's raising. Is this seat heating up? Absolutely. But it's going to heat up a lot more over the next 2 quarters. We've seen that Ted Cruz, the other senator, has declined to endorse, along with President Donald Trump, who has declined to endorse in this race. We do believe that an endorsement from President Donald Trump will tilt the tables in that person's favor, whether it's for Cornyn, whether it's for Paxton. But if Cornyn gets the endorsement of President Donald Trump, I still believe there is a serious likelihood that Ken Paxton could still win the nomination, even if Donald Trump does not endorse him in this race. That is how conservative he is. But at the end of the day, look, Ken Paxton has a lot of liabilities going into the 2026 Senate election. Whether it's his impeachment from 2023, different alleged corruption scandals over the past decade. He recently his wife filed for divorce against him. So obviously a lot of turmoil in the world of Ken Paxton right now. John Cornyn obviously would be the better choice electorally speaking for the Republican Party. Yes, John Cornyn votes with Republicans and Donald Trump 96% of the time. Yes, do I understand where Republicans are coming from, where they believe where he breaks with the party he breaks with the party when it comes to gun control or immigration, which are not good places to break. These are not good. And on the other hand, you're not a senator from a blue state. You're not Susan Collins. You are a senator from a state that voted for President Donald Trump by roughly 14 percentage points in 2024. So obviously, I understand the gripes that Republicans have with John Cornyn, but at the end of the day, I believe that John Cornyn will be the better nominee for electorally speaking. He votes with Donald Trump 96% of the time, and he has a much broader coalition than Ken Paxton has. There is no need to risk this race in 2026. Now, on the flip side, there's something that you can look at here. Democrats are in a terrible, terrible spot. There was a recent poll that came out showing that Jasmine Crockett was leading. Now, this was a poll from the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Yes, I understand that. But the most recent poll shows that radical, crazy House member Jasmine Crockett is leading in the most recent poll in the Democrat primary. She hasn't even announced that she's running in this race. Look at this. The former astronaut who is running in this race has only raised $200,000 so far. $200,000 as of June 30th. Wow. Are you kidding me? It's like the Democrat Party is truly a disaster right now in the state of Texas. And now we know there's a lot going on with redistricting in the state. You have state Democrats who are leaving, going to Illinois so Republicans will not have a quorum so they can obviously vote on this redistricting. I think this is a terrible place for Democrats to be, whether it's Colin Allred, whether it's Jasmine Crockett or Beto O'Rourke. They're all losers at the end of the day. None of them have the electoral prowess that is required in order to even put up a viable campaign in the state of Texas. None of them. No one in this primary has the ability to have a serious challenge. If anything, they will ride on the coattails of the National Democrat Party, who we know they will be a turnout machine in 2025. Democrats are much more likely to turn out in a midterm election like this than Republicans, generally speaking, nationwide. Now, there are some exceptions, you can say in Georgia, where that they don't really follow the national trend simply because of the demographics in the state. But at the end of the day, right now, I have this as a likely Republican seat. If Ken Paxton gets the nomination, I will be shifting this or have a serious consideration to shift this to a lean Republican state going into 2026. Something to look at in the state of Nebraska, Pete Ricketts, obviously running for re-election in 2026. We now know that Dan Osborne, who the loser from the 2024 Senate race in Nebraska, who just about unseated incumbent Senator and popular Senator Deb Fischer. Now, we can clearly see here that in 2026, he will be running. Pete Ricketts is running, and so is Dan Osborne as an independent. That will be interesting. As of right now, I have this as a likely Republican seat with really no plans right now to make any adjustments to that. Obviously, the closer we get to the election, that could happen. But as of right now, I'm not making any changes. A few things to note here. Kentucky. Senator Mitch McConnell will not run for re-election. You look at Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn may not run for re-election. She may run for the governor's race in Tennessee. In Alabama, you have Tommy Tuberville, who is leaving the Senate to run for governor in Alabama. Obviously, some big things going on here. Now, to jump over to the Democrat Party, the likely seats for the Democrat Party, that will be places like New Mexico, places like Virginia, where you have Mark Warner running for re-election, and New Jersey, where you have Cory Booker running for re-election in 2026. Now, for the Democrats, they are going to have two additional lean Democrat seats, and that will be in the state of Minnesota, in the state of New Hampshire. Remember, in both of these states, Minnesota, Tina Smith, incumbent senator, not running for re-election. New Hampshire, Jaheen Shaheen, longtime senator from the state of New Hampshire, is not running for re-election. Republicans tried to court former Governor Sununu to run in this election. Eventually he declined to run in this election, and Democrats are now well positioned to win this race. But recently, we saw that Republican from the state of New Hampshire, and I'm just going to get there real quick. So far, Scott Brown, who's the former U.S. ambassador to New Zealand and a former senator from Massachusetts and the nominee for the seat in 2014. He came the closest to unseating Jaheen Shaheen in 2014, coming within roughly 3 percentage points of defeating her. Scott Brown is running in this election. He will run in this election. He is probably the best chance that Republicans have to flip the seat. When he was in the Senate for Massachusetts, we know he was one of the most bipartisan senators in the Senate. That will bode well for him. That will bode very well for him in a state like New Hampshire. You cannot go full MAGA in this state. You need to be more of a country club, more of an establishment Republican if you want to win in states like this, especially in a midterm that historically there will be disadvantages for the Republican Party. As of right now, in the state of New Hampshire, you have Chris Pappas, who is the representative from New Hampshire's 1st congressional district, who will most likely be the nominee in this election. It will most likely be a Chris Pappas versus a Scott Brown in this election. Now, jumping over to Minnesota, it's a very, very different look there, where Democrats have a crowded field right now between incumbent Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who is running for the open seat, who is seen as the much more progressive Democrat in this race, running against the Democrat representative from Minnesota's 2nd congressional district, Angie Craig. These are two Democrats. Angie Craig is much more of I want to say of a liberal, not a leftist. She is more of a liberal in this race. Obviously, she is still a part of the Democrat Party at the end of the day, but she represents a more moderate side of the Democrat Party, if you can even say that exists. Now, on the Republican side, Royce White is given another shot at it. He was the 2024 nominee for Senate, And then former Navy SEAL Adam Schwarzy is running in the Republican primary. Now, Minnesota has not elected a Republican senator. Goodness, I couldn't even tell you the last time. Go back to 1994 was the last time Republicans won a Senate seat in the state. Oh, excuse me, never mind. 2002, that's right, Norm Coleman. What a interesting race. Remember, this was the year where Paul Wellstone died just on the day he was taking a plane. They had a debate that night against Norm Coleman. Paul Wellstone was the incumbent senator at that time. Obviously died roughly a couple of days, I believe, or a month before this election. Former Vice President Walter Mondale ultimately replaced Paul Wellstone on the ballot. Norm Coleman snuck by, won with roughly about with a 3% margin in this race. Obviously, fast forward to 2008, he was unseated by Al Franken by roughly in this election about 300 votes. But I do not expect that Minnesota will be ultra competitive going into 2026. Now, ultimately, who the Democrats nominate, who the Republicans nominate, will play a big role in it. That's why I have it as a lean Democrat seat as of right now. But still, I think Democrats definitely have the upper hand in the state of Minnesota. Now, for the lean Republican seats going into 2026, we have two of them. That will be the state of Iowa, and the state of Maine. Obviously, in the state of Maine, right now, Susan Collins will be running for a sixth term. Remember, Collins initially elected back in 1996 during Bill Clinton's re-election year. Susan Collins won this election by roughly 5.5 percentage points. She has gone on every 6 years to win, whether it was good years for Republicans, bad years for Republicans, or in between years for Republicans. We saw Susan Collins with an electoral dominance in the state. Add to that, Democrats are struggling to find a viable candidate to run against Susan Collins in 2026. Collins has said she will run for re-election. The Democrats really have no one. Right now, there is an open gubernatorial election in Maine, which has attracted a lot of Democrats to that race. On top of that, you have Jared Golden, who has declined to run. He's going to run for re-election in his ultra-competitive Maine 2nd Congressional District, a district that President Trump won by 10 percentage points at the same time, when Golden won by a half of a percentage point. The biggest name that could jump in this race is Governor, or soon-to-be former Governor Janet Mills. Democrats have been pressuring Mills to run in this race, but she is undecided. She's a 78-year-old soon-to-be former governor who would run in this race. And she is the top recruit target in 2026. In a race where Democrats have a structural disadvantage and they want to get as many wins as possible. They want to put as many wins on the board as possible going into 2026. Ultimately, she has not made a decision yet. She hasn't even toyed really with the idea. She even says it. Look, I wasn't born with the burning desire to be in Washington, D.C. any month of the year. And you understand. And we know Chuck Schumer, fresh off of victory, recruited former Governor Roy Cooper to run in the Senate election in 2026 in North Carolina. That's a big one. Now, obviously, pushing for people like Janet Mills, people like Sherrod Brown in the state of Ohio. But as of right now, we are not making any changes to our election in Maine or to our rating in Maine. This is still a lean Republican seat. Republicans, I should say, Susan Collins has the upper hand in this election. There's no doubt about it. Her fundraising prowess. Look, she has $5 million cash on hand. The National Senatorial Republican Committee has already said they are going to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into this race to retain the Senate majority. They would do anything they can to make sure that Susan Collins wins, no matter how she breaks with the Republican Party. The reality is, and I think a lot of Republicans need to get this through their head, Susan Collins represents a state that Kamala Harris won in 2024 by 7 points. You should be goddamn lucky that you have a Republican senator from that state who's been able to win. Let's be honest about it. You should be lucky. You should feel lucky that you have someone like Susan Collins in this election, because otherwise you would have a Democrat. It would be a 52-48 Senate majority right now for the Republicans instead of 53-47. That's the reality. Be lucky you have votes. Look, she's coming. Look, did she vote against the One Big Beautiful Bill? Absolutely. But did she vote to get it out of committee? 100% she did. Absolutely she did. Did she vote to confirm many of President Donald Trump's judicial nominees? It's like, look, at the end of the day, she has still fallen in line with the Republican Party 70 to 80% of the time. And life is a game of relativity. Politics is a game of relativity. Who else could represent the state of Maine and be a Republican? Like who? There is no other Republican. Once Susan Collins retires, Democrats will take control of the seat. I'm calling that right now. So be lucky. You are lucky. You are very lucky to have a Republican senator from the state of Maine. Same thing with Iowa. Joni Ernst, we don't know. Will she run for re-election? She is obviously she's the one who's on the retirement watch right now. People believe, because she pushed a lot of her major fundraising off into the fall, that she could potentially be pushing off a senatorial run. Maybe she's not going to run for re-election. President Donald Trump has already come on and said she's the best we have in Iowa. He wants Joni Ernst, and privately, they're pushing Joni Ernst to run for re-election in 2026. That they really believe that she's the best shot that they have. And they should not embrace the idea that she is not going to run. That would be terrible for Republicans in the state. But ultimately, this was a state that in Donald Trump's last midterms, that the popular vote in the House elections turned to the Democrat Party after the state of Iowa voted for Donald Trump in 2016 by 9 percentage points. It turned around in 2018 and voted for the Democrat Party. Overall, they picked up 2 seats in this race, and they won the popular vote in this election. They won the popular vote. And for those reasons, I believe that it's a little bit more competitive than, say, a Ohio or, say, in Alaska. Now, Alaska is an interesting one, too. That's another one you throw in there with Mary Peltola potentially running. Obviously, it seems right now that she's going to run for the the governor's election in Alaska, which will deliver a blow to Senate Democrats. Obviously, they would like her to run. Remember, she ran back in 2020, had an upset election in 2020. Or I should say 2022, and was a Democrat governor from a state that voted for Donald Trump by a pretty large margin. Remember, it voted for Donald Trump by 13 points, and they had a Democrat representative at large. But Democrats believe that if she ran, they would have an opportunity, but I don't believe she's going to run, and that's why Alaska is a likely Republican seat. And that leads us with the final 3 seats, and we actually are going to be making a big change in this rating. There's going to be a big change, and that is going to come in the state of North Carolina, where you have former governor and former popular Attorney General Roy Cooper, who announced he is going to run for this open Senate seat in 2026. All Democrats, the only other Democrat in the race, Wiley Nickel, immediately bowed out of this race, said he is not going to run. He's going to suspend his campaign. Roy Cooper will be the Democrat nominee in 2026. And on the Republican side, it appears that Michael Whately will be the nominee. As of right now, if you're looking in North Carolina, you have incumbent Senator Tom Tillis, who is not running for re-election. Now, you have Michael Whately, who will most likely be the Republican nominee going into 2026. Ultimately, Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, announced she's not going to run in this election. Donald Trump endorsed Michael Whately right after she made that announcement. On the Democrat side, like we said, Roy Cooper, obviously popular governor of the state of North Carolina, but there's a big but there. He has won in state elections. This is a federal election. This is a much different environment. At the end of the day, Republicans are going to paint him as an out-of-touch liberal from the state of North Carolina, an out-of-touch, and that's what he is. The guy is an yes. Does he have a good electoral history, track record? Absolutely. You can't deny the fact that he's won 6 straight statewide elections. Statewide, attorney general, governor. He is, look, you got to give him credit there. But they're going to paint him as a lockdown governor, a governor who wants to chemically and surgically allow people to mutilate children, who wants to who allowed millions of illegal immigrants to pour into the country under the Biden administration. Where was Roy Cooper? Where was he? We also know that he was a top pick to be Kamala Harris's vice presidential nominee in 2026. Now, ultimately, right now, there was a new poll that did come out that showed Roy Cooper leading Michael Whately in this election as of right now. Now, there was one poll showed that they were tied at 44-44, and then two other polls showing either a 3 to 6 point margin here. Obviously, the margin of error is at 3 percentage points here, but at the end of the day, we are going to make a change in this election. We are going to move this from a toss-up to a lean Democrat seat. Now, obviously, I am not trying to jump the gun here, but at the end of the day, Roy Cooper has fundraising prowess. He has electoral ability that is second to none in the state of North Carolina. And Michael Whately, although he was a former chair of the North Carolina Republican Party, he's a relatively unknown name in comparison to Roy Cooper. Now, this could 100% change over the next, what do we have, probably 16 months, 14 months to go. This could 100% change before then. But as of right now, this far out, it appears Roy Cooper is going to have the Democrat nominee. And it appears Michael Whately will have the nomination. We're going to have to see how this plays out, but we are going to move this to a tilt Democrat seat. So they just have the ever so slightest edge in the state as of right now, but it definitely could change going into 2026. And that leaves us with two seats. Each seat are in states that President Donald Trump won in 2024, and they have a Democrat senator who is either retiring or a Democrat senator who is up for re-election. Michigan, you have Gary Peters, who is retiring in 2026. Gary Peters was a 2-term senator, and right now you have a pretty nasty three-way race in the Democrat primary between Abu El-Sayed, Mallory McMerrill, and Haley Stevens. It's kind of getting a little nasty there. We are actually going to put out another video at some point this week specifically talking about the Democrat primary in the Senate race in Michigan. It is an extremely competitive primary right now. Probably the most competitive Democrat primary we have seen. Out of the open seats that we have so far, look, Minnesota is an open seat. Illinois is an open seat. It's pretty competitive in Illinois too, but it's not in a swing state, so it kind of makes it less interesting. New Hampshire was an open seat. There was nothing there. You look in North Carolina, Roy Cooper basically has got the nomination so far. Wiley Nickel bowed out of this election. But in the state of Michigan, right now, it is a three-way, pretty nasty race. On the Republican side, obviously, you have Mike Rogers, who was a former representative for about a decade and a half and a nominee for U.S. Senate in 2024. He appears that he will get the nomination after Bill Huizenga, at the advice of President Donald Trump, announced that he would run for re-election in Michigan's 4th congressional district. That was the best thing that could have happened in this race. Instead of big infighting inside the party, they're obviously going to go their separate ways. Bill Huizenga is going to run for re-election. Mike Rogers will get the nod for the Senate nomination in 2026. And then that leaves us with the final state of Georgia, where you have the most vulnerable Democrat running for re-election in Jon Ossoff, who has an amazing fundraising numbers. Look at this. This guy has $15.5 million cash on hand. $15 million. On the Republican side right now, it appears that Derek Dooley, Mike Collins, and Buddy Carter are the people who have jumped in the race so far. Derek Dooley appears that he is getting the nomination, or I shouldn't say the nomination, the nod from Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp has appeared to throw his support behind Derek Dooley, who's the former head coach of a Tennessee football team, but is the son. This is the big thing. The Dooley last name is big in this state. He is the son of a former popular head coach of a football team in the state of Georgia. Obviously, big name here. They believe that he will have fundraising power second to none. Obviously, Buddy Carter, Mike Collins, recently we saw that, and let's see if we can see who's dropped. Okay, right here, John King has dropped out and is going to run for re-election as Georgia's insurance commissioner. Obviously, right now, Jon Ossoff probably has a slight upper hand in this election, but not enough for us to put this as a tilt. This is still a very competitive race going into 2026. Republicans nationally are going to pour millions and tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into this race. But as of right now, this is my August 2025 prediction. I believe that the two toss-up races, Michigan and Georgia, and really North Carolina, yes. Do Democrats have the slightest advantage here? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it is still a toss-up election. But if I had to put my thumb on it, I believe that Democrats could hold in the state of Michigan, and Republicans would flip in Georgia, leaving it with a 53-4. Oh, excuse me. We forgot the state of Delaware right here. My apologies. A 53-47 victory for the Republican Party. They would hold their margin where they're at right now. But folks, that is going to wrap things up for today. As always, drop down below. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And as always, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. And folks, we'll catch you next time.